What's going on, YouTube? I just came back from Dallas where the Bandai Card Fest was at. It was an incredible experience being at Nats once again. It felt like a completely different experience this time with LCQ being on Friday. For those that didn't know, I had no invite to Nats beforehand. This meant I had to grind through the last chance qualifier, which was an event that took place the day before the main tournament, and it was essentially a regional that included all players with no invite. After 9 rounds, I somehow was X1, placing 9th and getting an invite to the main event the following day. So in today's video, I'll be going over my deck list that I used to clutch it up for the VOO crew. So here we are with the deck list. Of course, I had to run it up with good old Lucci, but in this case, we were running a list that was different than the others in NA. Building upon the original stageless list that I used to top in the Gen Con Treasure Cup, Noel threw in some cards that others weren't using, such as the Stussy that y'all see right here. This card is incredible when it comes to matchups that drop big bodies. In decks such as Bonnie, you get to destroy their 10-drop Dofi or 9-cost Zoro. Even their Rosinante or Kid, depending on what else is on their board or in your hand. Against a Nell, 10-drop Ace gets deleted. It being CP also felt nice because it allowed you to search for a big body. I felt like this card was very underutilized in the OP 7.5 format, but I also see why some others didn't run it. There are some lists out there that ran the 4-cost Kuzan in OP 7.5, opting for a more low-to-the-ground build. I tested it out, but always felt like the 4-cost Bourse was a better play. Against Black, it couldn't be KO'd, and in any matchup, I'd be swinging with it, and it forces opponents to reach that minimum 6k threshold to even attack it. I'll talk about it a little bit more in the BY match, but Value Moria really becomes so much more valuable too when you can put out Bourse and Spandam, so the Bourse can't be KO'd. Having these Kuzans, of course, is still an incredible card, and I've loved it since back in O2 Smoker days. But with only a week of practice with Kuzan leading up to LCQ, I stuck to my 4 Borsalinos in the deck. 4-cost Bourse definitely is the MVP in the deck, but another staple that added consistency to the deck was 6-cost Brooks. Having 4 copies of these 2 cards made my curve insane. Putting down Bourse, Brook into Isho or Moria just felt amazing. With your opponent dropping a 5-cost or less body on their 5-Dawn turn, you can delete anything that comes your way on 6-Dawn more consistently. This was something I talked about with the original stageless build, was trying to establish control early on in the game and not relying so much on the 8-Dawn plus turns. So many other Lucci decks on their 6-Dawn turn don't have the consistency of establishing a 6k body while removing board for the cost of 1 card from your hand. They would need to play 2 cards, such as a Reducer and Lucci, to remove a 5-cost body on their 6-Dawn turn. And even then, it forces you to send cards in your trash back into your deck when you're trying to build it up to Tempest Kick or Moria later on in the game. Comparing this version to the pre-banned stageless list I ran at Treasure Cup, you now see the introduction of Zombie Luffy. Some might be wondering why Zombie Luffy now when you didn't run it before. The reason being was that before we had to worry about Red Purple Law as well. Now, with no Red Purple Law and BY Luffy running rampant, Noel threw in Zombie Luffy to help with the fact that we're seeing lots more BY. I know some other players like the Zombie Luffy against a Nell matchup as well, so it has its uses outside of that BY matchup. Noel has also upped it to 3 Ice Ages into the deck now. This adds for more consistency considering almost every deck runs big bodies since there's no more RP Law. I saw some people running 4 Ice Ages, but I would encounter times when it would be too bricky. The deck also kept the same ratios of 8 2Ks in 2 0-cost events, allowing for nice counterability. I honestly don't know how people ran only 6 2K counters in some deck lists I saw out there. I love having the ability to counter out, especially to save Bourse when they're swinging 6 or 7K into it. With that being said, let's get into my matchups for LCQ and talk about what happened there. Going into round 1, my opponent was already at the table. I was like, cool, we can go right into it, which we did. He was running Lucci too, so I was preparing myself for a grindy Lucci mirror. We rolled dice, I won, so I was happy to go second. We do the deck shuffle, cut, Hand draws were beginning. He had actually drawn his hand, and I was in the action of drawing when another person walked up behind him and was like, I'm supposed to be at this table. That was when I was like, ain't no way. Because we had already done the preliminary things, and I was ready to play this Lucci mirror. So the original person gets up, and the new opponent sits down. He takes out Nami, and that's when I was like, oh shit. One of my Banes from OP07, a deck that took me out of making top cut in Pasadena, and a deck that haunts me to this day. I try to stay calm, but lose the dice roll, and from there, I end up losing the game. 4 Pilafs, 4 Kayas was just too much to handle. Round 1 was over in a blink of an eye, and there I was, really mad at myself, since every game in LCQ mattered so much. I try my best to shake it off, and round 2 begins. I end up facing my friend Ashura, who is on Lucci. This mirror was unfortunately very one-sided for me, and I get my first dub of the day thanks to the cards we had talked about earlier, which was Borse and Brooks. Absolutely insane being able to play them on curve, especially in the mirror. Round 3 begins, and I encounter another friend of mine, Timmy. He was someone I played at Kissimmee Regional back in April and had defeated me back then with Moria when I was on Sakazuki. This time he was playing BY Luffy, and I knew this wouldn't be an easy matchup at all. With the help of Zombie Luffy being bait, I took game 3. Now what I mean by Zombie being bait was I actually never got to use his ability at all in that game. On my 5 Dawn turn, I played Zombie and passed. On Timmy's 6 Dawn turn, he used Finger Pistol, which got rid of Zombie. Most Lucci players would be mad that their Zombie couldn't stick, but I was fine with that because he didn't establish a body on that turn, making it less pressure on me his following turn when he only had 1 swing to do. I was able to build more bodies and eventually win the grindy matchup. Another play that helps me tremendously in the BY matchup is my value Moria. Instead of playing Rebecca off of Moria and grabbing a 2K, I can establish a Borse, which can't be KO'd by Rocket Luffy. Borse can essentially block an 11K swing from leader, and I can cycle him back next turn with another Moria if I have one. Rather than grabbing a 2K off of Rebecca and having Rebecca being KO'd by the Rocket Luffy, I feel as though Moria into Borse is just so powerful there. Round 4, I encounter Nanelle, which I don't have too hard of a time with if they aren't able to rush me down. Luckily, their triggers weren't too crazy as well, and I handled their board every turn, allowing me to win. Round 5, I would go up against Reiju, which is an extremely scary deck in my opinion due to how fast it could be. If they see stage and Ichiji every turn, it could be a GG's. It was a very close match where either they kill me or I kill them the following turn, and it happened to be that I survived and took them down. In round 6, I encountered a Yamato that was 5-1. It was insane to see a Yamato doing so well that day, and it was actually against someone that I had played against before at Pasadena last year when I was playing Rebecca. So I knew not to take them lightly, even though it was a deck that was played not as much anymore. With Lucci struggling against fast-paced decks, I decided to counter out of their initial 8K swing. I didn't have a blocker for my 4 Dawn turn, which is why I countered 8K, because I felt like they would max swing again the following turn. Had I taken the 2 life on the initial 8K, I didn't want to bank on having to counter out of a 10K swing. From there, I established a Sabo on my 6 Dawn turn, but it was rough because they triggered Inuarashi on my first swing, Satori on my second swing, and their last life was 0 cost event into Capone, so it was a very close game. On his final turn, he would play Hody Jones and have leader plus Inuarashi and Satori to swing. I was able to counter out and kill him the following turn. Super scary game that reminded me a lot of the Sakazuki days. Round 7 was another Reiju that saw the gas early on but couldn't keep it up. I took the risk and established Isho on my 8 Dawn turn, which allowed me to more effectively clear board on my subsequent turns. Always a risk playing Isho in the Reiju matchup, since it's very reminiscent of Law, where if you don't remove some of or all of their board each turn, it can snowball and there's no coming back once their board is full of 4 cost and higher characters. Round 8 comes along and I'm feeling the pressure more and more. I know that there's only a little bit left to go and that I need to clutch up, but the fear of losing is also in the back of my head. I see Bonnie sitting across from me, and I'm somewhat relieved since it's a matchup I practiced a lot with Noelle. While it's favored on paper, I feel like if it's a good Bonnie player like Noelle, it can be 50-50, which is why I never consider it a free win. The game starts out going smooth for me. Then they establish Hawkins, and my opponent gets 10 cost Dofi out, freezing my board and making the lead that I had feel less significant. Luckily, I got rid of his 10 cost Dofi and was able to finish out round 8 victorious. With only one more round to go, I'm sitting on table 4 facing none other than Anel. This time, though, it's an Anel that starves. This strategy is something I rarely get practice against, so it was definitely tough for me, especially with no Isho on the field for constant cost reduction. What my opponent didn't expect was the MVPs of my deck to shine. At one point, I believe I had 3 4-cost Bourse on the field. The Golden Wall was in effect, making the Starve strat of Anel's not as effective since they starve to KO bodies with characters such as Gadatsu and Yamato. The game goes on to overtime, and that's when things get real nerve-wracking. I don't want to slow play my opponent, so in the midst of hurrying up, I played 4-cost Kaku and was about to subtract their Katakuri down to 4 cost since I thought I had reduced their Katakuri on the field with Leader Swing already. But in reality, I did not reduce the Katakuri with Leader Swing, so I couldn't 6-cost Brook it. Either way, I play Kaku in 6-cost Brook, and I pass. Looking back, since people were crowded around and saw my hand, I had another 4-cost Bourse, which I could have played down with my Brook instead. Either way, I pass and my opponent is also feeling the nerves and pressure of overtime. They play Yamato and attach a Dawn to their leader to swing. As soon as they swing, they realize they didn't heal life off Yamato. Even I didn't realize that they didn't heal life. Due to swinging with leader already, they couldn't change anything about that. We had 2 judges watching the game the whole time as well. He passes to me and I attempt my game-winning swings. This is when he triggers Onami to clear my only Bourse on the field, which was a necessary swing to go for game. I pass and he starts his last turn to go for game himself. He has 3 bodies, which I believe was 2 Katakuris, a Yamato, and he has a Frankie on board from triggering it earlier. I believe I had 4 life at the time, 3 of which was Moria, and with 5 swings total from him, including his leader along with the 4 bodies, he might have had game there. I don't remember exactly how much counter I had in time, but time in overtime was called after 1 or 2 of his swings, and that was game. I managed to win due to overtime, which is unfortunate in such a close game, especially with so much on the line. But it was a fair battle between us two, and we didn't have any ill will towards each other as fellow Pacific Northwest boys. I'm trying to give y'all a good overview of my matches because unlike any tournament I've done before, I didn't stream it. Game 1 versus Nami was partially streamed, but my IRL gear shit the bed, and instead of going through the trouble of troubleshooting it and worrying about it, I decided to lock in that day and try to get my invite. It was unfortunate I bubbled out of top 8, so no serial shanks for me for the resume, but I'm happy about my performance to top an in-person event. And thank you so much to everyone who has been supporting me. It was so cool to see people cheering me on IRL at the event as I made my climb back from that round 1 loss. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, drop a like, and comment down below. Good luck in your future events, and let me know how you end up doing. OP08 is now my focus, and I'll be releasing a video on what deck I'll be playing and a list for it soon. See y'all in the next one.